behalf of God. He said, verse 3, I will publish the name of the Lord and ascribe greatness unto our God. He said, he is a rock. His work is perfect. All his ways are judgment. The God of truth, without iniquity, just and upright is he. Then he began to speak about the children of Israel. Verse 5. He said, they have corrupted themselves. Their sport is not the sport of his children. You're saying they are his children, yet they are not his children. That's what he's saying in that place. He said, their sport is not the sport of his children. He said, they are a perverse and a crooked generation. Do ye thus requite the Lord, O foolish people and unwise? Is it not the Father that hath brought thee? Hath he not made thee and established thee? Remember the day that God was like complaining about his people. Remember the days of old. Ask your father, he will show you. Ask your elders, and they will tell you. And he went on. And then in verse 9, the heart of love of the Father again came out. He said, even though you have done all these negative things, the Lord's portion is still Jacob. Even though you have forsaken me, you are still my portion. I am helpless without you. I am possessionless without you. I am portionless without you. Can you think about this? That God is portionless without you. And that I'm reading the scriptures. He said, for the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob, the crooked one, the deceiver, the one who is the deceptive person. Jacob, the one whose name means deception, is the lot of God's inheritance. God chose that this person who cannot be upright is going to be my inheritance. And then he went on in verse 9 and he described him, and he went on and on until he got to, in verse 9, he talked about total identification and declared his emptiness without Israel. In verse 10, he declared his commitment to continue to support Israel. He said, even though your name is deception, I will keep you like the apple of my eyes. I will keep you like the apple of my eyes. I will protect you. That's what he says in verse 11, essentially. He said, as the eagle stirred up a nest and fluttered over a young and spreaded abroad a wing, he said, I'm bearing them, so the Lord will lead you. So the Lord will lead you. And there should be no strange God among you. He said he made him to ride on the high places of the earth that he might eat the increase. Verses 13 to 14 talks about his readiness to bless Israel. Verse 15 again began to talk about the foolish choices that Jacob made. In verse 15 he says, but Yeshurun waxed fat and kicked, and thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick, thou art being covered with darkness, with fatness. Then you forsake God, which made you, and you lightly esteemed God, which you lightly esteemed the rock of your salvation. You know, I want you to think about these contracts. This going back and forth between God and Jacob. God said, I am the God of Yeshurun. I'm the God of Jacob. And yet, you see all these negativities that surrounded the personality of Jacob. And God said, I will not give up. Look at verse 33. Chapter 33. Actually, if you look, before we go to chapter 33, if you look at verses 19 to 26, you see how God punished Jacob, but he did not forsake him. If you now go to verse 26, He said I would scatter them into the corners. I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. He said, why not that I fear the wrath of the enemy? And he went on and on and on, and he explained how he wanted them to be wise. Look at verse 29. How he wanted them to understand their later end. He said to them, he said, you experience defeat only because you allow me to forsake you, to sell you. He said, how would one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, except their rock had sold them and the Lord had shut them up. He said, for your vine is not the vine of Sodom or the fields of Gomorrah. He said, your grapes are not the grapes of Gal. Your clusters should not be bitter. That's what all those passages are saying. He said, your experiences should be positive. It should not be negative. That's what it is saying. When you go to chapter 33, verse 5, look at chapter 33, verse 5. He said, what I want to be among you is to be a king, is to be the head of the people, is to be a king, to be the head of the people. I don't want I want to show my power on your behalf. I want to reveal my glory in your situation because of your crookedness. But in the midst of all the crookedness, I have made a commitment that I will never leave nor forsake you. Can you go quickly to Isaiah chapter 44? Isaiah chapter 44. You see where they describe this God of Yeshurun again. In verse 2, he said, yet now, hear, O Jacob, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. He said, thus saith the Lord that hath made thee, and formed thee from the womb, which will help thee. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant. You see, whenever you see the use of the word Jacob, Jacob means deception. Can we all say deception? Deception. But right there, where God said, fear not, Jacob, what did he say next? He said, and thou, Yeshurun, whom I have chosen. He said, I am the God of Yeshurun. How can one person be deception and the upright one at the same time? Because Yeshurun means the upright one. Jacob means the deceiver. How can one person be negative and positive at the same time? How can one person be wrong and right at the same time? You see, but if we're going to tell ourselves the truth, that's who we all are. There are seasons in which we are wrong. But more than that, we know that there's a calling upon our heart, upon our lives to be the right. We are both Jacob and Yeshurun. We are both the mighty worship leader and like Michael, and the dreadfully sinful person. So I have brought you a message of encouragement this morning. It's not a long message. I'm going to make it very short. And I share it passionately with you. And I ask you to hold it in your hand. Put it in the palms of your hand. Because one day you will need it. Maybe somebody already needs it today. Apostle Paul at a point in his time said, "Oh, wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this sin?" Romans chapter 7. He said, what I want to do, I cannot do it. He said, but the things I don't want to do, that's what I found myself doing. He said, in my mind, there is a law of